Good morning, everyone. Good morning, UTLA family, parents, and community members. It's good to be with you again in our virtual space. This year, 2020, has been like no other. I can feel the year coming to a close because people are starting to post their best of 2020 lists, and my son Giovanni is putting the final touches on his gift wish list. For everyone who celebrates Hanukkah, I wish you a happy festival of lights from my family to yours. May this season bring you light and joy. In today's Facebook Live, we'll be talking about bargaining to extend the distance learning agreement, a huge win for our adult education instructors, and an inspiring fight by the CUDAHY community to stand up for educational and environmental justice. So first up is bargaining. The COVID surge we're expecting has turned into a COVID tsunami. In light of this fast changing situation, our current focus in bargaining with LAUSD is an extension of the 2021 distance learning side letter for the second semester. The current agreement expires on December 31st, and our goal is to ensure stability. We are having multiple bargaining sessions every week to try to reach an agreement. Big shout out to our bargaining team who has been working tirelessly to get an agreement. The team continues today to meet with the district and bargain the extension of the current agreement. We will keep you posted, so check your emails regularly. An extension may include some minor modifications to the daily teacher schedules. Some of the things that are possible include increased office hours for connecting with students and families, and additional synchronous instructional minutes on Mondays. But we're pushing to ensure that such modifications fall within the current 360-minute workday for teachers and educators, that the rest of the agreement remain intact. In the face of upheaval we're all dealing with, educators, students, and families need stability most of all. Across the country, employers are using the pandemic to erode collective bargaining rights. Many unions are working without a side letter and are being forced physically to return to work in January. Our strike in 2019 strengthened our power at the bargaining table, which is how we're able to continue to negotiate with LAUSD to stand up for our students, our communities, and ourselves by prioritizing over saving lives over anything else. We are still bargaining the details of hybrid schedules so as to be prepared if a physical return becomes possible at some point during the second semester, which is far from certain. We'll continue pushing for no roving teachers, no roving students, no in-person and remote teaching at the same time, isolated cohorts of students who don't interact with each other, no AM/PM cohort rotation for elementary schools, and minimal master schedule changes to the greatest degree possible. Other physical return issues, for example, special education services, HHS, early education, adult education, and itinerants will be bargained after we reach an agreement on the schedules. This week, as we all know, LAUSD made the decision to shut down all school-based and child care services until at least January 11th. This was a tough blow to students and educators taking part in the in-person services that were happening at school sites. But we agree with this decision. It is a prudent step in light of the accelerating COVID numbers. The shutdown includes programs in all of the voluntary in-person side letter agreements between UTLA and LAUSD, with the exception of the COVID-19 testing program that affects nurses. The grab and go food program will also continue. We recognize all the hustle that happened at school sites this week to distribute books and resources to students before the shutdown. Once again, our education community shows resilience and flexibility in these unpredictable times. Related to bargaining and our COVID reality, LAUSD released initial results of its safe reopening survey for parents this week, and there were some things to note. We'll put a link to the results in the chat below. First up is the fact that LAUSD families overwhelmingly support the job the school district is doing in these difficult times. 80% of LAUSD families gave the district good or excellent ratings for communication. 72% of families gave the district good or excellent ratings for its COVID-19 response. And this next result is pretty gratifying for educators. 75% of parents gave crisis distance learning a good or excellent rating. Educators, please take that to heart. Let that sit with you a while. Under the most extreme circumstances, while juggling your own family responsibilities and the stress of a global pandemic, you are delivering for our students, our babies. Distance learning is far from optimal, especially for our youngest students and our highest need students. We all know that, but you are delivering, and LAUSD families see it. And here's another important result from the district survey. 66% of LAUSD families say they want to stay fully online learning if and when students are able to return to campus. 34% prefer a hybrid model, with some learning in person and some remote. The survey aligns with what we're seeing in national polls, and we'll put links to some of those national polls in the chat below. By significant margins, low-income communities of color, the ones disproportionately impacted by the economic and health impacts of the pandemic, are more likely to think it's unsafe to open schools and plan to keep their children home if they do. White and affluent parents indicate the highest levels of support for reopening schools. That is a different story than you hear from AstroTurf groups like Speak Up and other privatizer-supported groups. They keep claiming that most parents want a physical return to schools, and they often cloak their calls in the language of equity and racial justice. But it's clear that the people pushing the unsafe reopening of schools are listening to the wrong folks. They are not listening to the Black and brown families we serve, who overwhelmingly want to stay with remote learning. If opening schools is about equity, we need to listen to those most impacted. And privatizer groups are not the only forces pushing for unsafe reopening of schools. Political pressure is mounting. There's a new Assembly Bill, AB 10, that would force public school students to physically return to school in stages by early spring, after health officials lift closure orders. The bill requires 2/3 approval of the legislature, which is a high hurdle. The bill's authors are likely using this as a political tool to inject a sense of urgency into the debate about reopening schools. But that sense of urgency is deeply misplaced. That urgency should be about getting the virus under control through bold action on the local, state, and federal level so that safe in-person instruction can once again be a possibility. That urgency should be about prioritizing our students' education over reopening bars and restaurants. That urgency should be about giving schools the funding we need for safety protocols and the enriched resources and support our students deserve after suffering through this pandemic. We will stay strong, UTLA community, in putting the health and safety of our students, staff, and families at the forefront of all we do. We will never waver from that. So now we have to celebrate a huge win for our adult education community. For years now, adult ed instructors and their students have fought side by side against budget cuts that would have decimated the LAUSD adult education program. And now they have scored a big victory on permanent status for adult ed instructors. On Tuesday, the LAUSD Board of Education directed district officials to offer Division of Adult and Career Education teachers a path to permanent status in the same manner as their pre-K-12 colleagues. Shout out to board member Jackie Goldberg for authoring the motion and to the co-sponsors, Dr. George McKenna and Scott Schmerelson. This is what leadership looks like. This is what listening to the community looks like. Here's a little backstory about this fight. For many years, district officials were following the spirit of our contract and awarding adult educators tenure-like protections. 6 years ago, they abruptly stopped. Without permanent status, an adult educator's schedule could change year to year, depending on the whims of management. 1 year, an experienced instructor could have a full load of classes. The next year, only 10 hours. This undermined the strength of the DACE program by limiting job security for hundreds of educators. But now our hardworking adult ed instructors can get back on the tenure track, which is good for them, their families, and for the students they serve. LAUSD has one of the largest adult education programs in the country, with 11 centers and 140 satellite locations offering instruction in some of our most underserved communities. Classes include ESL and citizenship classes, high school diploma and equivalency classes, and a vast array of occupational programs from auto repair and carpentry to medical technology and aviation repair. This program is life-changing and deserves support and resources to continue its critical mission. You know, UTLA is all about coalition building, locally, statewide, and nationally, with community organizations, grassroots groups, and labor brothers, sisters, and siblings. For a while now, we've been working with the network of some of the largest state and local teachers unions in the country on issues of educational and racial justice, holding national days of action and strategizing for change together. This week, our allies sent a joint letter to President-elect Joe Biden about the next education secretary. Biden has promised to appoint an educator, but we need more than that. It's not just about moving away from the destructive legacy of Betsy DeVos. It's about a whole new paradigm for public education in our post-pandemic world. We need an education secretary who will meet the threat of COVID-19, make new commitments to Black and Brown students and families, govern for the common good, and promote the right to recovery through a significant investment in school communities. The letter to Biden was signed by state and local teacher organizations representing more than 300,000 educators nationwide. We'll put a link to the letter in the chat below. And now, shout outs to our educational communities. First, to the Cudahy community for standing up strong for educational and environmental justice. Parents, teachers, and community members in Cudahy have been organizing since February and have now filed a lawsuit to stop KIPP charter schools from building a new school on hazardous waste sites. KIPP's plan was approved by the city of Cudahy without the legally required environmental review and cleanup. Even though the site has 200 times the amount of arsenic deemed safe by the state of California for schools or residential areas, and is contaminated with oil and toxic gases, they still want to build there. This fight is deeply personal for the community of Cudahy. Polluters have long subjected the Cudahy community, which is 95% Hispanic or Latino, to environmental injustices. In early 2020, a Delta Airlines jet dumped fuel on Cudahy residents, teachers, and children. An Exide battery recycling plant, just a few miles from Cudahy, has been releasing toxic pollutants into the environment for years. A local elementary school, just a mile and a half from the proposed charter school, has been closed intermittently due to oil, sludge, and other hazardous chemicals seeping onto school grounds. The community held a news conference in front of the toxic site this week. We'll put a link in the chat below, as well as a link to the GoFundMe if you want to help with the legal costs of this righteous fight. For #WokeWednesday last week, Canoga Park elementary teacher Wendy Lozano first reviewed with her students the hours of our grab-and-go food centers, since many depend on this program to have a school breakfast. Then Wendy asked her students, "Do you ever wonder how free school breakfasts started?" That question started a discussion and a history lesson. The Black Panther Party started the free breakfast program in 1968 because hunger and poverty made it difficult for many poor Black children to learn in school, and most poor children went to school hungry and stayed hungry. Wendy also shared with her students that in 1969, a Senate hearing, the National School Lunch Program administrator admitted that the Black Panthers fed more poor school children than the state of California did. Thankfully, the Panthers' free breakfast program focused national attention on the urgent need to give poor children nutritious meals so they could be successful in school. This attention helped lead Congress to fund the National School Breakfast Program for all public schools by 1975. As Wendy states, it's important for our students to learn the truth and the power of community organizing. At Miramonte Community School, Marco Flores, the community school coordinator, has organized a fresh fruit and vegetable pantry for Miramonte families. Twice a month, Marco and classified employees sort fresh produce donated from UMMA Clinic and Food Finders, two of Miramonte Community School partners. As a part of the community school's mission of supporting the community, the Miramonte Community School is helping families during this time of food insecurity. This is yet another example of how our community schools are stepping up in new ways. And do you have room in your day for a little uplift? This is a story as communicated to me by a UTLA member. Today, I announced Student of the Week with my 5th graders. We are 100% virtual, and typically when they are the champ, they earn a trip to the school store for 3 free items. Today, I said he wasn't going to the school store. You see, this student is the only one to have 0 missing assignments and perfect attendance for the entire year, all virtual. In addition, he's responsible for helping his 3rd grade brother and 1st grade sister all day. I mentioned this to the principal, and I said I was going to give him a $10 gift card. My principal matched it, and now it became a $20 gift card. Upon hearing this, the student asked if he could give his gift card to a peer. He said he knew this peer was really struggling with school, friends, and home, and he hoped that this would lift his spirits some. Bam. Tears and goosebumps. I told him I would do as he asked, but I was still sending him a gift card as well for his demonstration of character and kindness. And this is how the teacher ended her story to me. In times like this year, when we are all stressed and nothing seems to be working, it is moments like these that keep pushing me through. This was the most amazing thing I have ever had a 5th grader do. I love that story. Those are the moments that stick with us, and that, like this teacher said, keep us pushing through. You know what doesn't give us that kind of inspiration? Being told to give another unnecessary assessment that will sap instructional time and that we know won't help us pedagogically. At next week's area meeting, we are starting a new phase of our campaign to end overtesting in a pandemic. We'll be holding parent meetings to talk about this issue, and we'll be looking for your stories on how overtesting is hurting our students. Your chapter chair will share more information at a future chapter meeting. Related to overtesting, high-stakes standardized assessments simply don't make sense in a pandemic. Nothing about this school year has been predictable or regular, and the results of the statewide standardized tests, like the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, won't be valid, reliable, or even useful. UTLA is working with its affiliates to push the state and federal governments to suspend state testing for spring of 2021. As part of this effort, CTA, California Teachers Association, is asking for our signatures on a petition to help this fight now. We'll put a link in the chat below. Last week on Facebook Live, I talked about the powerful We Are One virtual open house to highlight programs that affirm Black students, staff, and families, and confront the impacts of anti-Black racism with educational communities and move toward anti-racist practices. The event was co-sponsored by LAUSD, Student Health and Human Services, and UTLA. And it was a great collaboration. We'll do more in the future. Along those lines, I'd like to share a new resource from LAUSD, Student Health and Human Services, and School Mental Health to acknowledge the impact racial trauma for the Black community and promote wellness. They've come up with 3 new flyers. One is for supporting Black students. One is for supporting Black parents or caregivers of Black students, and one for Black staff. We'll share the links to the flyers in the comments below, and they're also available on the LAUSD Student Mental Health homepage. The lead authors were Karen Wallace, April Pinson Jones, Lakeisha Johnson, and Dr. Kimani Norrington Sands. Thank you all for advancing this important work. And now we close with news of passings in our UTLA family. We learned this week that Alex Dixon, a teacher at Normandy Avenue Early Education Center, passed away. Our thoughts are with Alex's friends, family, and colleagues, as well as his students. Aiko Inoue, the mother of UTLA Secretary Arlene Inoue, passed away on November 25th at the age of 98.5 years old. Aiko was born in Boyle Heights and attended Malabar Elementary, Belvedere Middle School, and Garfield High, and died in the same neighborhood. Her father owned a department store in Little Tokyo, and her mother was the first Japanese-speaking social worker in Los Angeles. At the age of 19 years old, Aiko was forcibly incarcerated at Manzanar concentration camp, along with her extended family, where she learned about discrimination, resilience, and survival. She was grateful for her life and enjoying giving to others. She was the longest and oldest Meals on Wheels volunteer when she had to quit at the age of 92 years old because she could no longer drive. She delighted in delivering hot meals and offering companionship to those in need. Aiko is survived by 3 generations of family, including her 11 and 13-year-old great-granddaughters who she adored. Arlene thanks the UTLA family for your love and support during this time. Until next time, be safe. I wish you moments of grace and peace in these uncertain times. And do me a favor, this weekend, unplug, rest, and replenish. Stay UTLA strong, because together we rise.